What is earnest money? We're going to talk all about it right after this. When you go to buy a home, or actually when you sell a home, you're going to run into the concept, the idea, the word earnest money. Now, in the real estate world, we have all sorts of lingo and words and jargon that you kind of need to know if you're going to be buying or selling. So earnest money is definitely one of them. Well, what is it and how does it work? Earnest money is simply a deposit that a buyer makes into escrow in good faith, how serious they are to buy your home. Now, escrow is a third-party company that holds all the money. So buyers write checks to escrow, they don't write them directly to the seller. And seller receives checks from escrow, they don't receive them directly from the buyer or from agents or from anyone else. Escrow handles all the money for everybody. So buyer deposits earnest money at the beginning of the transaction into the escrow account. And this shows the seller that they're serious, that they have money, and that they have the wherewithal to make the purchase that they're committing to in the contract. Now, if a buyer were to back out for any reason that the contract doesn't allow for, that earnest money typically, at least in Washington State where I work, would now be at risk for the seller to keep. So if the buyer defaults on the contract, the remedy for the seller in most cases is that they get to keep the buyer's earnest money. Sometimes this can be a really small amount and sometimes this can be a really big amount. But if the buyer has agreed to buy the property and they have backed out of the contract without using a contingency or some form of a loophole that allows them to back out, then the seller can make that request that they get to keep the earnest money. And it's all built into the contract. They don't really have to do anything. The buyer's breaking the rules, and so they lose their earnest money. So that's where we got to be careful as a buyer and representing buyers. We need to make sure that your earnest money is never at risk completely. And as a seller, you need to understand that if for whatever reason you kind of get hosed in the end and the buyer walks away, there is a remedy for you, and typically that comes in the form of earnest money. Hopefully that's helpful. For more tips and tricks about buying and selling real estate, please subscribe to our channel. Let me know in the comments below if you ever have a crazy story about earnest money. I personally haven't had one, and I hope to always avoid them because we want that earnest money to always be protected. Thanks so much for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.